Bloom interview with Metal Method founder Doug Marks. More info at fullandbloom.com. I'm assuming by your occupation, your life hasn't been too altered by the virus.
My life hasn't changed much at all because I pretty much work by myself. I tend to stay in one room anyway most of the time, and I've been living this way since 1982. About the only thing that has affected me is going out to eat and stuff like that. My hobby is playing golf, and I'm still able to get out and do that, so it hasn't affected me a lot. It has been very good for the business, though. A lot of businesses are hurting right now, and I feel really bad about that, especially restaurants and service industries like that. It's killing them. But it worked out very good for me in that people needed to stay home, shelter in place. They needed something to do, and they ordered guitar lessons. March and April were the best March and April that I've had in many years, maybe ever. Now, people are kind of getting on with their life, and it's summer, and the guitar lesson business tends to slow down quite a bit this time of year, and it's rather normal at the moment.
Anything new on the Metal Method front?
Yeah, very much so. I am getting ready in the next day or two, hopefully today, but I'm not quite finished with the project yet. I'm going to start doing some live stream, and I've got a pretty innovative setup where it's going to be a combination of live as well as some recorded things that I will play in the program. I plan to broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, and a few other places simultaneously. This is my first venture into it, so I'm not promoting it. I'm really just going to start broadcasting, and while I'm getting the hang of it, I expect only a few people will be watching, and that's desirable because I could do some things, start promoting it, put it in the newsletter, send it out to 20,000 people, and suddenly I have a pretty big audience, and I would rather give this thing a test run before I actually go that far, but I expect in the next couple of weeks that I will start promoting it.
And so the best way to follow you on your YouTube channel and Facebook?
Absolutely. Subscribe to my channel. We have a Facebook group. Also, go to our homepage, Metal Method, and at the top you can see where you can sign up for our newsletter. And anything that I do, I let people know in my newsletter. But of course, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you're going to be notified if you choose to be notified anytime I upload something. So I expect, just because of that, and I have 50-some thousand subscribers on YouTube, even not announcing it, I'm probably going to have a pretty good audience the first broadcast, but I'll make an explanation of, hey, I'm new at this is a test run, I expect there will be problems, but that's the nature of things.
I ordered lessons when I was a kid, so it's very cool for me to be doing this interview. I was wondering, do you have like a classical method or a acoustic method or blues method? Do you have that kind of stuff?
I don't. But we have instructors that do all kinds of stuff, especially, I assume you're familiar with Batio.
I am.
He has a jazz lesson. I do I do a variety of things within, definitely not just hard rock and metal, and I also do some blues things in my lessons, and I'll expand on that a bit. At classical, I'm really not a classical guitarist, so that's off limits. One of the things that I am doing right now, and I am more isolated than I have been. There's not as much, vacations and all the other things that I normally might be doing, so I have had a lot of time on my hands, and I've spent the time on my hands in the last 2 or 3 months working on really just a single song, trying to make it sound as professional as possible. Programmed the drums initially myself. Recently, I found a drummer on Fiverr. We completed that part of the project. I am mixing and mastering and learning about it in the process. As a matter of fact, my first live stream is going to introduce people to Cakewalk that aren't familiar with the fact that it is now free, that it's an amazing program, and it doesn't take you very much money outlay, just an audio interface to get started. And so my first thing that I'm going to be doing with the live stream is a basic introduction to Cakewalk, and in particular how to use Cakewalk with my lessons, because I have backup tracks that you can bring into the Cakewalk platform to play along with the backing tracks and record your guitar along with the backing tracks. You can also take our Guitar Pro files that have MIDI drums and bass, bring them in. There's a lot of different things that you're able to do, and I'm going to give some detailed instructions. I've used Cakewalk for 25 years, but I really just used it to simply record my guitar and very little else. I didn't delve deeply into it, and over the last few months I have spent a lot of time really learning things inside and out, so I think I have a lot to share with people on that.
Yeah, really, I just thought of it because you already have the metal method. You've got a ton of subscribers. You've brought in other people to do lessons where you just say brought in like a badass classical guitar player or something, you know. With your following already, you could go all over the map and just bring somebody in and put it under your banner.
I mean, where I'm at as far as metal method, I have turned it into more of a co-op type of thing. Years ago, I made a lot from my instructors. A lot of money was pouring in at the time, okay? What's going on right now is, I mean, let's go way back before right now. In 1982, it was me, Starlicks, Hot Licks, and we each had our niche. And if you wanted hard rock and metal, you typically came to me, maybe me and Starlicks had some cool stuff too. But there was very little competition. Right now, anything you want to learn is on YouTube. And I think it's fantastic. I, like everybody else, go on YouTube to learn all kinds of things. I've learned an awful lot about, Cakewalk. There's some great programs out there. But what has happened is my market share keeps getting smaller and smaller. And there's not much money to be made in me having an instructor and trying to scrape something off of what they make. There's not enough to really give them much incentive. So the way I have things set up right now is it's more of like a co-op. Once a month, my instructors, they get their royalties. Angelo Batio right now, he is doing incredible. He's doing a lot of live streams. He's selling a lot of his product. Historically, I've always sold more than Michael or any of my other instructors. There were exceptions, but it was almost always me, about 50%. Right now, Michael's doing so well that he's selling me about 3 times as much as I am. It's one of the reasons it's gotten me in gear to do these live streams. So anyway, what keeps Michael going is he gets paid very, very well. And he gets paid well because I don't take very much off the top. And I run the whole thing like a co-op. We share expenses. If I'm not doing very well, I don't have to pay very much of the expenses. Michael right now is doing really well. He's paying about a little over 50% of the expenses. But when I attract somebody in, yeah, they help cover that. But it's difficult making much money doing this right now because there is so much stuff out there that you don't have to pay for, and it becomes increasingly difficult to make a living. As a matter of fact, in January, before COVID, sales were extremely disappointing. I mean, that's one of the things that made me turn the whole thing into somewhat of a co-op. We have a choice at this point. You guys want to take your masters and run with them? I'm not making any money. I don't care. Not a big deal. You don't even have to buy them from me. But if we hang together, we can share expenses and carry on. Well, lo and behold, the next month, as fate would have it, we did tremendous business because a lot of people do come to Metal Method. My typical customer right now, typical student, is someone that played hard rock and metal, possibly played in a band, at least jammed with their friends and everything when they were in high school. And then life kind of got in the way. They went out and got a real job. Guitar went in the closet, raised their kids. And, I started 38 years ago. Now many of these people, their kids are growing. They've started playing guitar again, and they're having the time of their life, and they remember Metal Method. So that's how I stay in business. They remember me from way back then, and my typical student right now is probably about 50 years old. A lot of people think because I give hard rock, heavy metal lessons or whatever that, you got a bunch of kids. I have no kids. There are no kids that buy Metal Method to speak out, percentage-wise. It's almost everybody in the 45 to 55 60-year-old age range.
You start your teaching career in Denver, and I read that you were in touring bands while you're in Denver?
Well, cover bands. Before Denver, I played out of the southeast, particularly Atlanta, Florida, and that area. The vacation traffic down in Florida. I would play 6 to 7 nights a week, but it was at the time mid-'70s, and it was cover bands. Okay. After that, I moved to Denver. I didn't play at all when I was in Denver, but I did start teaching private guitar instruction in Denver. However, I had not given up the dream, and my wife and I decided, let's move to Hollywood. Beverly Hills, swimming pools, whatever. Pursued the dream. And when I came out here, I found that the dream was pretty hard to pursue. I mean, I realized, I wasn't naive. I was almost 30 at the time, so, I wasn't stupid or anything, and I had my head on straight. But when I got out here, the whole thing was much different than expected. It wasn't a matter of I didn't have the talent or the ability or the look or any of the other things. There was so much crap out here to sort through. I'd go for an audition. Nobody knew who I was, and it'd just be a band that would never go anywhere because the quality of the people that I was coming across were not very good. They were not good players. They were mostly amateurs. They had never actually played in any kind of professional bands at all. And so I decided I better get back to doing the guitar lessons, and that evolved into Metal Method very quickly. I mean, I moved out here in 81, and in 82 I started Metal Method, and then by 85 Metal Method was so successful that I felt that I could pursue my dream, and that's when I did Hawk, and I had actually accumulated about $80,000 that I was able to spend promoting the band, housing the band, paying for rehearsals, the whole thing. I was covering all expenses, and I went through the entire $80,000. And at the other end of it, because there were problems with the band, the guys were younger than me. It was very difficult to manage. There was alcohol and drug problems, and so I went back to Metal Method.
And back then, 80,000 went a lot further. I mean, that was a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even with Metal Method, when I started Metal Method, I had absolutely nothing. I had just been kicking around. And I mean, I had a couple of guitars and no wealth, no job, nothing. But within a year and a half, I was making over $100,000 a year. So it was a real rag to riches. But as time has evolved, at this point in time, because there is less demand for type of lessons that I do and so on and so forth, and there's so much competition that I don't make much more than a regular instructor does right now, if even that.
I'm assuming you had been to L.A. prior to moving there, though,
Never.
Right?
No.
You just moved did you move?
Well, it started, my ex-wife had a job in Atlanta, and I didn't. When I left the band that I was in there, the band that was doing the traveling around, playing in Florida and such, and she got an offer to move to Denver. She was hand-painting lamps, and the company wanted her to move out to the headquarters in Denver, and so they moved us out there. And after we were in Denver for a couple of years, and as I said, that's where I started giving some guitar lessons, they laid her off, so neither one of us were really working to speak of. We rented a truck. I had a VW. We tied a VW on the back, trailer hitched it or whatever, and drove to California, not knowing anybody aside from an aunt and uncle that I had out here. Didn't know anybody. But at the same time, I'm originally from West Virginia. When I moved to Atlanta with my ex-wife, we moved to Atlanta, did not know a single soul. The day we got there, we met somebody, and they said, hey, you can come over and spend the night at our house. I mean, that was a long time ago. But, yeah, for the decade from when I was 20 to 30 years old, I didn't have, as my mom would say, a pot to piss in.
So do you move in with your aunt and uncle, or do you guys get your own place?
Got our own place. As a matter of fact, the aunt and uncle lived in Orange County, and that's an hour and a half drive from where we decided to settle. We wanted to be reasonably close to the Hollywood area and all that stuff because of my rock and roll dream.
Right.
So we settled in Van Nuys, and while in Van Nuys, that's when I started doing the Metal Method thing, and very quickly moved to a nice home, Probably a nice car.
It was like within a year you're in a house. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it was a rental house at the time. I didn't have a house. Didn't have a house until that we paid. Was our own until '86. So that would have been right after Hawk. But at the same time, I mean, when I was in Hawk, we were driving a brand new XJS Jaguar, going to the Rainbow, hanging out, and I'm sure that caused a lot of competition. People would look at me and go, "Man, I got to do what that guy's doing. He's doing something right."
There was this guy that I used to work with in Texas, and he was in a band that kind of made a little stink there and went over to L.A. and was being courted by, I guess, a manager that had managed Quiet Riot. I just remember him telling me a story that all these guys from different bands that had been in national acts were coming together to do a band, and I guess you were in there, but everybody's driving up in their broken down cars, and you drive up in your Jaguar. Did you form or almost form any other projects after Hawk?
Well, okay. The original Hawk broke up, and that was, I believe, like in January '86. And then I spent the rest of the year working on my Hawk album, recording my Hawk album, and I did audition players for the second version of Hawk. We auditioned, we went to the recording, the rehearsal studios, SIR in Hollywood. We rehearsed, but once again, I looked at it and it's like, this is not what I wanted, and I wasn't willing to throw good money after bad, is basically what it was at that point. So I just gave up on that project too. So
in that second one, are there some guys from...
there were some notable players. Nobody particularly comes to mind, but I know one of the drummers that we auditioned went on to play with the Bulletboys, and I auditioned a lot of people, so sure, I would say that the story was legitimate.
It's funny with your connection with all the Bulletboys.
Well, I don't know if you know the story, but Lonnie, the bass player since I don't know whether you know the story or not, I'll quickly fill you in on the details.
Yeah, please tell.
Okay, so my bass player was Lonnie Miller. That when Hawk disbanded, Lonnie went to King Kobra, and then from King Kobra to the Bulletboys. Now, I left the band, I left Hawk, my own band, and they went out using the name New Hawk for a while, which of course pissed me off. So we weren't on good terms at that particular time, but they needed a guitar player, so Marq, I forget how to pronounce his name, Torien or something like that.
Torien, yeah.
Yeah, Torien. Marq took my place. Marq's an excellent guitar player and singer, and so after King Kobra, Lonnie knew Marq. Obviously, they played together in the New Hawk version of the band, and so he and Marq put together the Bulletboys. And also, the original group Hawk had a very good drummer by the name of Glenn Burtis, but we had information out there, audition information, that even though our band was together and we were rehearsing, that information was still out there because I put it out through Metal Method and everything. So it's not like, okay, we found the drummer and all that. Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. A lot of people didn't know. So we got an audition tape from Scott Travis, and Scott Travis was the drummer we had, was as good musically, as good as a musician as the rest of us, but Scott Travis was just amazing. And as you may or may not know, he went on to play with Judas Priest.
And Racer X.
First Racer X, yeah. And then Judas Priest, and he's still associated with them 35 years later.
So that kind of clears up one of my questions. When Marq came in, I thought, well, that's weird that Marq replaced you, but then I read somewhere Charlie had said that Marq was phenomenal. He was like an Eddie Van Halen clone.
Absolutely. He really had the Eddie Van Halen stuff down. Awesome guitar player, awesome singer.
I thought that was weird that they would have continued on something that you funded. I I'm assuming when you funded Hawk, you're basically a record label to the band. Do you pay them salaries and stuff like that, or how did that work?
They were paid. I had a band house that they could live in, which was basically an apartment. They all lived in the apartment. Lonnie lived with me quite a bit. Actually, he never lived in an apartment, come to think of it. He lived with me. And that's when things started to fall apart. I was giving someone the money to give to the landlord in late 85. Instead of giving the money to pay the rent, a person in the band decided it'd be a good idea to buy Christmas presents for everybody. That was the type of thing that I was dealing with, and it was like, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. And so one thing led to another, and it was like, I just packed up my stuff and said, sorry guys, I'm not willing to do this anymore. At the same time, what were they going to do? They were going to continue to do the same thing they did. You know, I can't tell them, do not play together. So they played together, and they decided to call themselves New Hawk, as I said before. And they were taking out ads in the major local magazines and everything, and I had paid a lot of money for advertising, and I went to the magazines and said, look, guys, these guys are not Hawk. You know that I'm Hawk, and you know the name belongs to me. And there's going to be trouble if you keep accepting advertising dollars from them. And anyway, I don't really know exactly what went down, but I decided I really didn't want someone using the name of the band that I spent all that money on. And, you know, it belonged to me. And so I did what I could to make sure that it didn't continue to happen, and it didn't. At the same time, I don't know that I'm on bad terms with anybody that played in the band.
And did they just break up soon after?
Yeah, fairly soon. I don't know, maybe a couple months. And that's when Scott Travis, the drummer, he was being courted by Racer X. Even when I was playing in the band, I learned later. Lonnie very quickly got in King Kobra, and then Carmine had the same problems. I know Carmine, and we've talked about things, but he had a difficult time with Lonnie, and then Lonnie moved on and did very, very well with the Bulletboys.
And Mark was in King Kobra, you know, at that tail end as well.
Good point.
Just to backtrack a tiny bit, you're arriving in 1981 in Los Angeles. How do you describe the scene at that time?
Oh, the scene was crazy. That's when, everybody was in Hollywood, and I was there hanging out, watching Rat and Motley Crue and everything that was going on at that time. I mean, that was really the birth of that whole glam metal thing. Yeah, I saw Jakey Lee when he was with Rat. Gosh, it was very exciting. And I saw Motley Crue at the Whiskey, the first gig. It was not hard. There was a line, but it wasn't hard to get in. The next time I saw them line around the building, and then the time after that was at the Santa Monica Civic Center, and that was right when they were making it big, and it was pure madness. They were too big a band to be playing in a small venue at that point, and I have never been in a crowd that I was so crushed. And the people that I was with, it was like, man, we might not make it out of here. This is bad. It was an exciting time. Just in a nutshell, it was an exciting time, and I spent a lot of time in Hollywood as part of the scene. When I was with Hawk, we would hang out in Hollywood a lot and play the rock scene, Gazaris.
Did you guys build up a nice following during that time you were playing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Are you aware of the Roxy show that on YouTube?
I am, yeah. The one in 1985?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that Roxy show was sold out. I was able to, I had a list, and I was able to notify my students at the time and easily pack the places that we played.
I wanted to kind of go into the Hawk album a little bit. What was it like working with Dwayne Barron?
I did not work with Dwayne a great deal. I worked with Alex, the engineer there.
Waltman?
And, Alex Waltman, exactly. And what the deal was, I wanted to work with Dwayne, so I worked out the deal that, Dwayne would get a piece of the action, blah, 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 for overseeing the project. And he did oversee the project, but I mainly worked with Alex. Dwayne would stop by every now and then, and a cool guy, but at the same time, I don't remember exactly how long I spent recording the album, but it was not long, not much more than like a week or two, maybe 2 weeks at the max. I'm not even sure if it was that long, and most of it was tracking stuff with Alex.
And Alex did a lot of, I mean, he worked on Wasp and Motley Crue and Quiet Riot.
And it was a Pasha Studios, and it was exciting. I was in there when Guns N' Roses were there, and this is before they made it. They were working on their EP, the live EP, but they were in the studio doing a touch-up to it. I knew Chris Holmes in Wasp, and I had hung out with Chris at the Rainbow and places like that, and Wasp was in there, and so I hung out with him, and yeah, it was a very, very interesting environment.
Did you meet Spencer Proffer?
Yeah, but only in passing.
What kind of rate did they charge there at that time?
Well, because it was a project that was primarily Alex, it was not, I got a pretty good deal on it, but I can't remember. I really can't remember. I would say that it was off the top of my head, what it probably was is in the neighborhood of like $5,000 or something like that. I don't know if it was even that much, but I went in there with an 8-track that I'd recorded all the vocals. David C. Folk, the vocalist on the album, never stepped foot in Pasha. It was just me. And I had recorded everything aside from, well, we had drum tracks, and Matt Sorum had helped me with the drum tracks, as well as some other guys had worked on the drum tracks, all MIDI stuff. And so the album was kind of arranged and complete. I had recordings of everything. And then we dumped the 8-track to the 24-track and went in and started replacing tracks, but we still kept the vocals and keyboards and my bass playing. I can't even remember if I did the bass in the studio. Probably not. I did the guitar in the studio.
And that album is back in print. I mean, you printed CDs?
Actually, I didn't really. Someone printed CDs. I had a deal with a guy many, many years ago and got screwed on it. And then I've always burned CDs, and they looked okay. But I decided less than a year ago to do the CD with the original album artwork. They look really, really killer. Did that through CD Baby, and it's not exactly leaping off the shelf or anything, but we have had solid sales, which is good. I was talking about mixing and mastering and the stuff that I'm messing around with now. I'm not new to that game. I had a studio in Chatsworth 25 years ago for a couple of years. I had spent a ton of money putting this studio together in a warehouse. So I have quite a bit of experience with that type of thing. It's just I'm really trying to fine-tune my skills right now. But I am seriously considering having the 24-track up to digital and doing a remix, remaster, and probably re-recording of some of the parts to make it really sound like today. So that's something that I want to do, but there are so many things that I want to do, and much of it, how life is, it doesn't materialize. But I do have my sights set on that, and my sights have been set on that for quite a while. I think that it will happen, and I am writing again, and the tune that I've been working on, my COVID project, is one of the best tunes I've ever done. And it's certainly, it's like, whereas my Hawk album, like I said, it was recorded in 2 weeks, aside from what was on the 8-track and everything, of course. So that does take it longer. But I mean, I've worked a couple of 3 months. The recording that I'm doing right now, I want it to be top-notch, mastered, really professional sounding. And it's more of a singer-songwriter type of tune, and it's a tune that I think would be very good as a movie soundtrack or something like that.
Would you be singing on it?
No, my wife is a professional singer, and she sang on it.
And still working on the follow-up to the first Hawk album, right?
In one way or another, I've been working on that ever since then. I have bits and pieces of a lot of tunes, and that's another thing, another project that I'm working on, trying to get all this stuff assembled. I have a lot of half-baked ideas and half-baked songs and this and that, but I would really like to get that together. But once again, all these things take time, and my time's limited, so I'll do what I can. Anyway, I better run.
Okay.
I better run, Adam. We can do this again sometime. I think, with my live streaming and everything, you do a good interview. Maybe we could do some kind of Zoom or something and kind of run over some of the same territory and do it where I could use the interview with a live stream.
Yeah, man. Just keep me posted. That Hawk CD is available on your Metal Method website, correct?
Yeah, go to Metal Method and click on the picture, my picture, and that will lead you to my catalog page, and it is on my catalog page.
Okay, very cool, man.